Okay, to put this in context, this is the European Junior Championship in Holon, Israel, and I was about 18. And I'm playing Malikov, who's now, or has been at least 2,700, a very strong Russian grandmaster. At the time he was like 2540 and I was about 2,400. I think this is the first time I've ever been on a demo board, which is sort of relevant to what I'm about to say. Because it seems to me that without really realizing it, chess players perform an awful lot. And you think it's a fairly antisocial game in some ways, in the sense that, you know, you're doing your own thing in this enclosed little world of 64 squares. But if you look around the chess tournament hall and look at people's faces, like, no one ever makes those sort of faces at home. You know? No one ever sits there and sort of goes, you don't do this sort of stuff. And they're doing it, you know, it's not clear if they're doing it for the opponent, for someone else, or if it's just kind of a sort of physical expression of what they're thinking. But it's clear that the presence of other people has an impact on how you think. And certainly if you're not used to demo boards, it can have an effect on you because you start performing in some sort of way. Okay, so check. Knight, no, it wasn't knight 3, c3, takes his pawn back, and I put knight a3. Now, if you're interested, there was actually a move here. Black can in fact go, yeah, bishop takes c3 check. And I mentioned that in the book. It's a risky operation, but it might be playable. But my opponent didn't. He played more sensibly. Just remember, so this is, let's see, get the section in the book. So yeah, simply got his knight out, and knight b5, knight b4. Ah, sorry, forgive me, I've made a slight mistake. The knight's still here first, queen goes back, so that makes more sense, yeah, knight a3. So now it's obvious why bishop takes c3 is possible, because this knight will be hanging at the end. That's, forgive me, that was just a bit careless, but that's how it works. Now I've got a piece out, and I put knight b5, and we put queen d8, and I got another piece out, and you put d6. Now, the position's not that exciting, but I don't have to think about it anyway. It's a pretty normal position. There's nothing really very exciting happening. What I want to tell you about is what's happening in my head at the time. Because, like I said, I was already 2,400. I think I was already an IM. And, you know, I've got a decent understanding of chess at this point. But somehow, I got sort of red mist syndrome right now. I suddenly felt it was time to really crush this guy. And it's completely unjustified. And I noticed in this game, it's a bit shocking what happens next. I'll show you in a second. But then I looked at some of my other games and I realized, hang on, this is really a pattern. I'm really like self-destructing big time against a lot of these players. And I realized after a while it's because I had a sort of myth in my mind. I was sort of trying to emulate something that I didn't really know how to emulate properly. In this case, I'd recently played through a lot of Pals games. And I was very into this kind of sacrificial attacker player who, you know, very early in the game throws all the pieces at the opponent and sacrifices something and wins brilliantly. And I was in that kind of mood now, so I thought, well, I've got all my pieces out. I'm fully mobilized. Even that word, fully mobilized, is dangerous. It makes you think that you're ready for battle or something. But I thought, I'm fully mobilized. Let's do something to him. So I start looking for all these tactics. I'm now being the wizard. I'm conjuring a little bit, but it's completely premature. A much more sober approach makes you see that black's done nothing really wrong. There's no particular weaknesses. And nonetheless, I thought, well, here's the time to kill. So I went e5. Not castle. Queen's not out. Rook's not connected. Give away a central point. It does have a certain amount of logic to it. In certain lines. For example, if he plays knight takes e5, and I play knight takes e5, I'll give you an example of some of the lines that excited me. Okay? And now, if he plays with the bishop, I can maybe go queen b3 attacking f7, and then he has to weaken himself with e6, and then maybe I castle long, and there's some initiative. I can sort of sense some initiative there. And if he takes with the pawn, you get excited, because what does white have here? A big trick. Yeah, bishop takes f7 check, wins the queen. So, you know, you start to see these things and you get kind of excited. And that's what happened. So I thought, great. Now you imagine if you're already quite pumped up, you start seeing these sort of lines, you get more and more pumped up until you're losing contact with reality completely. And that happens in chess a lot. You know, just look with sort of objective eyes at people at tournaments. They're not in a rational state of mind. They're not in a rational state of mind at all. Most of them are, it's like they're on a carnival ride or something. They're extremely a lot of adrenaline in the body. They're extremely worked up, and they're trying to prove something in a game that is pretty meaningless. So I mean, it's extremely odd activity. If you're sort of an anthropologist coming from the outside looking at the chess world, it's a fascinating thing to watch because you get these people who are getting extremely emotional about something which on the face of it isn't very emotional at all. And that's what happened here. Like I said, I'm 2400. I play e5, pumped up with all these big ideas. My opponent, Rowson, just looked a bit contentful and played a6. So one of my sort of main troops is being kicked away. And I didn't really see what I was going to do about that. So I was a bit troubled. So what did I do? It's not so easy to do anything very sensible here, actually. In fact, this move is just a kind of pull back, just a kind of wake-up call. The knight's being asked to get out of the way, and as a result, I lose a lot of my momentum. So what do? You've got this myth in your head, you think you're Tal, you're pumped up, you're trying to crush the opponent, you're on a demo board. What do you do to keep that myth alive? Yeah.
You sacrifice an F7.
Good, yeah, that's exactly right. And almost, to be honest, at this point I'm past the point of no return. E5 is just a losing move. At this level, you can't give a centre pawn away for nothing and expect to survive. But once you've done it, there's really no way back. So yeah, I took this guy. He's got to take back. And now what do I see? I see something very exciting. I go queen d3 check. And again, I notice all the tactics that favour me, none of the ones that don't favour me. This is mentioned, by the way, in one of the chapters in the book. Actually, the same chapter. I speak about the importance of not having a clue. And by that I mean, good chess players tend to think like scientists, in the sense that they falsify their hypotheses. So they have a theory about the position, an idea how the position should be, and then they set about proving it wrong. So they think, okay, I think white's better, now why is that not right? And you start looking for all the reasons why you're wrong. Weaker players tend to do the opposite thing. I think white's better, why am I right? And that's actually been not quite substantiated. I mean, the study was only with 20 players. But it's very plausible. It rings true based on my own experience. And I think that's what, that's really true. I think stronger players are very skeptically minded. They're constantly trying to disprove things. Weaker players are much more mythically minded. They're constantly trying to justify their own idea about the position. So, needless to say, bishop e6, knight g5, great. I see that, and I think that's the key to the position. But it's nonsense, it just goes back. And now, of course, I get all excited about things like, bishop b6, queen takes, knight takes, winning the queen, and stuff like that. But somehow that doesn't happen either. Why not? What if I miss something here? What am I missing? Bishop b6. Insult the bishop itself.
Can you just go queen d7?
Yeah, knight c7 check. Is it king f8? Is that what it is?
F8.
No, it can't be king f8. No, it's okay, give me a second. It's all in here. Interestingly, sorry, I made a slight mistake. This one might have been a slightly better move, but only slightly. I mean, you can go d5, for instance, and you solve those problems. The same thing applies. All the comments I just made apply, but slightly differently, because I played knight g5 check. That's why I'm getting confused. Queen d3 check does work beautifully if it goes king e8, and I'm sure at the time I took an f7 that was one of my ideas. But then I saw d5 and I thought, I'm not really doing anything. So I played knight g5 check. King e8, and now I think great. All these things I just mentioned. Now what? Knight, queen b3, threatening mate. And now when he takes with the knight, the trouble is that even bishop b6 doesn't work. Because bishop b6 now he just takes with the queen, and with knight b6, queen takes. So even my most base tricks are not working anymore. So I have to come back to e4. But what's interesting about this is that how I'm thinking even now, because I think this is also pretty typical. I'm not thinking, damn, it's gone wrong, I've lost a piece, we're not enough. I'm thinking, what a wonderful square on e6. And I'm thinking, can't castle anymore. I'm thinking all the things that are adding fuel to this fire that I've set up for myself. But, I'm a piece down, and I've got a very dodgy attack. It's just not really happening. So what does he do? He's obviously not very fazed by this. And what's his next move again? Knight e6 is coming. Yeah, he just plays this simple move. Gets the bishop out of the way. And I do have a knight h7 trick. So I get excited about that as well. And I'm still attacking. See, I've still got the spirit. I've kept the spirit alive, but objectively I'm completely lost. And this is happening a lot in chess. You've got this idea of who you are, what you're trying to be, and you're trying to impose that on the position. But against a good player, he won't really have any of it. And that's what happened now. He just killed the queen's diagonal. So the knight's now in no man's land, really. I didn't really have anything better than take the bishop, but now the knight comes out, fully developed. Still a piece down. And so I castled queenside. And I think even here, I was telling myself somehow that this is all part of the plan. And I'm not a madman. It's not like I don't understand that I'm a piece down. But chess does that to us somehow. We're so keen to be something or someone that we lose contact with what's really going on the board. And I think that's not just me. I've asked enough people and taught enough people to see this is absolutely common. And the chapter 4 in the book is called "Which Myth Are You Playing By?" And it's trying to get at that. What are the motivating factors? Who are you trying to emulate? It can sometimes be a great player, like a kind of archetype like Tal, a sort of a world champion that everybody knows. But it can also be the guy in your club that always beats you and you want to be a bit more like. The guy who maybe grinds you, he doesn't give you any of your tricks and he just beats you eventually at move 60. Somebody like that, and you think, I'd like to be more like him, so you start trying to grind and you find it's not so easy because you're blundering or whatever. And this happens, but the thing is, people don't wake up to it. Instead they read opening theory and they play through middle game books or whatever, but they're not really facing up to what they're doing. And that's what's always amazing about chess, that people are just in a constant state of mild denial, I think. That might just be my view, but I think it's not without some basis.
When you're playing at that level, to what extent do you look at the body language, the action?
Not much. It's no. Some people are very expressive. Kasparov, probably the best player of the century, is extremely expressive. If he's worse, you can tell it by looking at him. But other players are much more cold and expressionless. But it doesn't matter that much. It's a bit of a another thing I say in this book is that psychology is not just those little, tricky kind of mindset about outboxing the opponent who prefers a certain kind of position. Psychology is deeply embedded in the game. It runs right through it. Blood runs in our body. It's like psychology is all the way through it, from the way we think about positions to the way we learn openings, to the way we react to defeats, to the way we aspire to certain things. We're constantly dealing with issues of identity, very emotional things, and yet we still treat chess as if it was somehow more like maths or some kind of academic subject, but it just isn't the case at all. And if people were a bit more honest with themselves, they'd realise that. What it is, maybe at its best, at its most ideal, is this sort of intellectual gem that's played by kings with pristine intellects who think in terms of strategy and tactics. But for the majority of us, it's not like that at all. It's a complete slugfest in which we're all confused and a bit emotional. So, that's not to make it negative, that's what makes it such a wonderful game. But I think it's the first step towards improving is being a bit more honest about what chess really is and what it means to you. Because your first take on what it is probably not the right one. You probably have to probe yourself a bit to realise what you're really thinking about the game.